Avid readers have a perennial problem, and that is, how do you read books or papers or PDFs while annotating in a way that you don't lose your notes afterwards? You can quickly find what you want to find. How do you do this in hard books, in English or Arabic, and how do you do that in PDFs? This is what we're exploring today. Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is Shahin-ur, and on this channel we discuss Islamic and educational content. A question I'm often asked is about how to take notes. In this video, inshallah, we're going to cover a couple of ways in terms of how I take notes. Everybody has their own style and everybody has their own method, and ultimately what I would advise as well is not to copy me or my methods, but to find something that works for you. And if that means taking inspiration from others, by all means, go ahead and do that. Now, people will annotate in different books in different ways for different reasons. Now, annotating will depend on what your purpose is and what kind of things you value and what you want to ultimately achieve. For instance, the way I personally annotate on Arabic books is different from how I annotate from English ones. For instance, if we look at an Arabic book, I try to keep everything pristine and clean, with no marks on there. The only marks that you might see every now and again is if there's a pencil mark correcting a mistake or something like that. Otherwise, I try to keep my Arabic books completely clean, as though it's never been touched, even if the entire book has been read cover to cover. So what I do in terms of taking notes is I have several papers at the beginning of each of the books that I open and read. And what I do is I make notes of whatever I want to write, and I put the page number, or if it's a hadith book, then the hadith number or something like that next to it. So for instance, if I've got something like, Saturn's orbit, so in an Aqidah book, if I've got something about Saturn's orbit and I'm surprised, hold on, people 950 years ago knew about Saturn's orbit, I'll write down Saturn's orbit, page 99. The reason I do it this way is because I have all my notes collected in one place. Whereas if I, let's say I read this book around 5 years ago and I want to come back and look at, hold on, I read something about Saturn or Jupiter, one of those planets or something over here. Let me go and find that. It's going to be really tough to find it. Even if I've gone to page 99 and I've made a note of it somewhere, I would have to know exactly where it is if I want to trace my notes back. Whether I highlighted it, whether I made a note on the side or something like that, you'll have to do that. However, if I've got all my notes separately at the beginning of a book, then what happens is I can basically just go through my notes, look at exactly what I want, and go to the page number that I want, cite it, quote from it, take a picture, whatever I want to do, revise it, and that's it. My research is made a lot more easier just because I've made those notes and collected them into one place. Now, in terms of English books, you have multiple types. Some types of English books are made for mass consumption, and they have fewer words on each page, and you can just carry on reading. And if I were to take notes on those, I'd do it in the same way as I take notes in Arabic books. However, when it comes to academic books with dense writing, there's often too much writing on a page, and you can't always, read this without some kind of struggle. There are far too many words on a page. It's very dense writing. Even if you have a note that something is on page 82 or 83, you can go to page 83 and it's still going to be hard to find it. So in dense academic writings, especially in English, what I would do is I'll still take my notes if I want to, in terms of having a paper at the front. However, I would also highlight and annotate directly onto the book. I don't have the same reverence in English books. Of course, we all respect and have an etiquette for knowledge in books. However, when it comes to English and Arabic, there's naturally going to be a bit of a difference, especially in terms of how they print it. So more classical Arabic books, I may have highlighted something like that here and there, especially when we were studying handwritten manuscripts in Dar al-Ulum, for instance. However, modern prints tend to have a lot more spaced out writing. The typesetting is a lot more pleasing to the eyes. So English books, sometimes you just have to highlight everything through it. Now, how do I highlight? This is where you need some sort of a method. I try to color code whatever I highlight. Not every single color has a designated role. However, I have something like, for example, if it's in green, then that means it's an opinion of somebody, whether it's the author's or somebody else is being quoted. If I highlight something in blue, then that generally means there's some sort of higher vocab or an interesting usage of a phrase that I haven't come across before, or I find interesting that I'd like to save that. So that's something I would do in English. And other than that, in terms of general points, the way I highlight them are in generic colors like yellow or orange or pink. Some people advise to have a dedicated color for disagreeing. So if you disagree with the author, then you highlight it in red or something like that. That's an interesting approach, and if that works for you, then go for it. However, what I tend to do if I disagree with the author or if I have any critical notes is I generally put in pencil a question mark on the side of the page in the margins, and I'd make a note of it in my paper at the beginning of the book. I may have some pencil markings on the sides in the margins as well. However, these are generally things just to explain what's going on or to clarify some ambiguous text within the book. I don't make any footnotes or anything like that. Any external notes, I make it on a separate piece of paper. Now comes a stage for iPads. A third way to read or consume books nowadays is digitally. Generally, people in the academic or scholarly communities would read PDFs more so than ebooks. And my digital note-taking experience is limited to PDFs and not any in ebooks. I personally don't read entire books or monographs as PDF, whether that's Arabic or English. The bulk of what I read as PDFs are generally academic papers or chapters as part of larger academic collections. When it comes to digital note-taking, there are a couple of apps that I've used here. Initially, I used to use an app called Xodo, which, while useful, I don't entirely recommend because it does have a lot. It does lag a lot and it feels a little bit buggy. It's quite bloated of an app. However, if you're using an Android device or Windows or something like that, then it may be a decent all-rounded option. What I used to do while using Xodo is I used to underline things rather than highlight. Some things in the footnotes I used to highlight. However, other things I would generally just underline with the same color code that would apply in other books. And additionally, when it comes to annotating on the sides, I would also do that as well, whether in English or Arabic, it doesn't really matter because the advantage is you can just rub something out. You can click on a button and delete something, rewrite it, and it doesn't really damage your book in the way a physical book or a hard copy can be damaged. This is one of the advantages of having a digital reading experience. However, since then, I've moved on to another app called PDF Expert. And here, what I've noticed is because it doesn't lag or it's a lot smoother, the experience is a lot more fluid and streamlined, I generally use the highlighting feature a lot more than I did on Xodo. So instead of underlining things, I would just highlight it in various colors. For instance, here's a paper that I haven't read yet. So what I would do is just click on a button and let's say you want to highlight something here, I would do that. So let's say we found somebody's name here and you want to highlight somebody's opinion, then you might just, highlight something in green like this. Or if it's a scanned PDF, which is quite common with Arabic books, then you can't really use the native highlighter or underlining feature. You have to use the hand-drawn one. So for instance, I would click something like this and physically highlight everything that I want to do. Also, if I want to make notes, then I'll just click on the pencil tool or something and just make a note somewhere on the side. One invaluable thing about digital note taking is you can collate all of your notes in one place. So for instance, if you've highlighted something here, you've highlighted something somewhere else, you've taken a note somewhere else, what you can do is just click on a button and all of your notes appear on the side and you can just click on them and it'll take you exactly where you want to go. This is near enough impossible in a physical book. The closest way to solve this, in my experience, is to have dedicated papers at the front of your book, making all your notes on there rather than inside of the book. So this is how I take my notes. If you found any benefit in this video, then you know what to do. I'm not going to tell you. However, do definitely share this video with others who might benefit from it. And I'll see you, inshallah, in the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.